The first thing I remember is the noise. It's a sound you never forget, a sound that gets into your bones and stays there. It wasn't just one sound, it was everything at once. The roar of the boat engines, the big naval guns firing from the battleships behind us, the German 88s firing back from the cliffs, and the waves. The waves were just crashing against the hull of our ship, LCI-85. We were a Landing Craft Infantry. Our job was to take about 200 soldiers from the 1st Infantry Division, the big red one, and put them right onto the sand. The English Channel was so rough that day, 6-foot waves, and most of those poor kids from the Army were sick as dogs before we even got there. They were just boys. I was only 19 myself, but some of them looked even younger, their faces pale green from the seasickness and white from the fear. We were all scared. If a man tells you he wasn't scared that day, he's lying. We were headed for a section of Omaha Beach they called Easy Red. There was nothing easy about it. The pre-bombardment from our planes and ships, it hadn't worked. The cloud cover was too thick. So the Germans, they were just sitting up there on those bluffs, dug in, waiting for us. We were a perfect target. I was a motor machinist mate, so my place was with the engines. But on a landing craft, everyone is everywhere. When we got close, maybe a few hundred yards from the beach, the real hell started. It was the sound of the German machine guns, the MG-42s. They called it Hitler's buzzsaw for a reason. It was a high-pitched, tearing sound, like the world was being ripped apart. You could see the water around our boat just churning, erupting in little geysers where the bullets were hitting. Then the mortars started coming down. You'd hear a whistle and then just a deafening crash. We were making our run in, trying to find a spot between the obstacles, these big metal things the Germans put in the water to rip the bottom out of our boats. And then it happened. A tremendous explosion right under us. It felt like the hand of God himself had punched the ship up out of the water. We'd hit a mine. The whole craft shuddered, and I was thrown against a bulkhead. The lights flickered, and I could hear men screaming. The explosion tore a huge hole in the side, and we started taking on water fast. We were dead in the water, crippled, and the German gunners on the bluff just zeroed in on us. We were a sitting duck. The skipper, he knew we were sinking. He screamed the order, "Drop the ramps, get them off the boat, go, go, go." So we dropped the 2 narrow ramps at the bow of the ship, right into that meat grinder. The Army boys, they had to go. That was the mission. They started running down that port side ramp, rifles held high, right into waist-deep water that was already turning red. Men were getting hit the second they stepped off the ramp. They were falling before they ever took a step on French soil. It was a slaughter, and that's when I saw him. He was a kid, couldn't have been more than 18. He had this look on his face, not of courage, not of anger, just pure, absolute terror. He was halfway down the ramp when a burst of machine gun fire stitched across the water right in front of him. He flinched, and then another burst caught him square in the chest. It threw him backward. I saw the impact, the way his body just crumpled, but he didn't fall into the water. He turned somehow and started stumbling back up the ramp toward me. His eyes, I'll never forget his eyes. They were wide and they were looking right at me, like he was begging for something. Help, his mother, I don't know. He made it to the top of the ramp, right onto the deck, and he just collapsed at my feet. There was so much blood. The noise of the battle was still all around me. Men yelling, guns firing, explosions. But in that one moment, it all went quiet in my head. It was just me and this boy. I knelt down beside him. I could see the light going out of his eyes. There was nothing I could do. There were no medics, no time, nothing. He was dying, right there in front of me. I didn't know what to do. I was just a kid from Brooklyn. So I did the only thing I could think of. I put my hand on his shoulder, and I started to pray. I just started reciting the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. I said it over and over, my voice shaking. I don't know if he could hear me. I hope he could. I just held him, trying to give him some small comfort as his life drained away on the deck of that broken ship. He died right there, in my arms. I never knew his name. He was just one of the thousands we lost on Omaha that day. But for me, he was all of them. He was every single boy who never came home. That moment, that boy, that is my D-Day. It's been more than 75 years, but I can close my eyes and I'm right back there on that ramp, holding him. It feels like it was yesterday. The morning of June 6th, 1944, it's as clear as this morning. The English Channel was a monster. The storm had delayed us a day, and the water was still furious. We were on our ship, the LCI-85, a Landing Craft Infantry. Just a long, flat-bottomed boat, really. And the waves, they were throwing us around like a cork. I remember seeing these 5 and 6 foot swells, and our boat would just climb up one side and slam down the other. Most of the boys we were carrying, soldiers from the 1st Infantry Division, the big red one they called them, they were so seasick. Young kids, a lot of them from the Midwest, had never even seen an ocean before. And here they were, in the middle of the biggest invasion in history, green as the water around them. The noise was a constant low rumble from thousands of engines. You looked out and all you could see from horizon to horizon was ships. Nearly 7,000 vessels, they told us later. It was the most incredible and terrifying thing I had ever seen. There was this feeling in the air, a kind of heavy silence even with all the noise. Nobody was talking much. We were all just thinking about home, about what was waiting for us on that shore. We were the tip of the spear and we all knew it. As we got closer, the whole world just erupted. The big battleships behind us were firing their main guns over our heads. You could feel the concussion in your chest, this deep thump, thump, thump that vibrated through the whole ship. We were headed for a sector they called Easy Red on Omaha Beach. It turned out to be the worst place you could possibly land that day. We saw the shoreline, the bluffs, and we saw the puffs of smoke and dirt where our naval shells were supposed to be hitting the German bunkers. But they were missing. The cloud cover was too thick, the sea was too rough. The bombers had missed, the rockets had missed. The Germans up on those cliffs, the 352nd Infantry Division, they were battle-hardened veterans, and they were waiting for us, untouched. We were about 1,000 yards out when they opened up on us. It wasn't just rifles, it was machine guns, the MG-42s that sounded like a zipper being torn, mortars, and the big 88mm cannons. The water around us was exploding in these giant geysers. Then it happened. It was about 7:40 in the morning. There was a tremendous bang, a sound so loud it felt like it tore the air apart. Our whole ship lurched and lifted out of the water. We'd hit a German mine. It blew a huge hole in our side, right in the engine room. I was a motor machinist's mate. That was my place. The lights went out, the engines died, and we started taking on water fast. The steering was gone. We were dead in the water, a perfect stationary target, and they just poured everything they had into us. That's the part that never leaves. After we were hit, our skipper, he managed to get the ship onto a sandbar to beach us. He gave the order to drop the ramps. We had 2 of them, one on each side of the bow. The moment those ramps went down into the surf, it was like opening the doors to hell. The German machine guns on the bluffs had us perfectly sighted. The sound of the bullets hitting the steel ramp was like 1,000 hammers, a deafening pinging and ricocheting. The soldiers of the Big Red One, they started to run down the port side ramp. They were running into waist-deep water that was already turning red. Men were getting hit and just disappearing under the waves. I was standing near the top of that ramp, trying to help direct them. And then I saw him. He was just a boy. Couldn't have been more than 18, 19 years old. He had this look on his face, not fear, but surprise. He took maybe 3 steps down the ramp and then he stumbled. A burst of machine gun fire had caught him right in the chest. He didn't cry out, he turned around with this confused look, and he started walking back up the ramp towards me. He took a few steps, collapsed, and fell right at my feet. There was so much blood. I knelt down. The whole world was exploding around us. Men were screaming, bullets were flying. But in that moment, everything went silent. I just saw his face. I knew there was nothing anyone could do. He was dying. I took him in my arms, I held him, and I started to pray. I just started reciting the Lord's Prayer. Our Father who art in heaven. I don't know if he could hear me. I just wanted him to know he wasn't alone. His eyes were open, looking at me. And then they weren't. He died right there on the ramp of my ship. I just held him. I went into shock. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I just held this boy as the battle raged around us. You don't. A part of you dies with him. For a while I was useless. My shipmate had to pull me away. He had to pull the boy's body out of the way so other soldiers could get down the ramp, so they could go and die on that beach too. The whole thing was a slaughterhouse. By the end of that day, on Omaha Beach alone, we lost thousands of men. The official numbers say somewhere around 2,400 casualties, but I think it was higher. And they weren't men, they were kids. We were all kids. Too young to vote, most of us too young to legally buy a beer, but old enough to be sent into that meat grinder. The entire D-Day invasion, the part that everyone makes movies about, it was really only about 18 hours. We hit the beach at dawn, and by 10 o'clock that night, the beach was mostly secure. 18 hours. In 18 hours, we put 2,000 kids onto that one stretch of sand from our landing craft group, and so many of them never came back. You don't continue after seeing that, you just survive. The memory of that boy, his face, the weight of him in my arms, that became a part of me. It's a scar on your soul that you carry forever to remind you of the real price. It wasn't about glory or victory in that moment. It was about a boy from somewhere in America who died on a steel ramp in my arms, a long, long way from home. Our ship, the LCI-85, she was done for. After that mine ripped a hole in her belly, she was a dead thing in the water. The tide eventually pushed her further onto the sand, and there she sat, a broken piece of metal on a beach of broken bodies. We were stuck. For a while, the battle raged on around us, over us. You just tried to make yourself small. You could hear the zing of bullets hitting the steel hull, the crump of mortars landing in the water and on the sand. It's a sound you never forget. When the tide went out, the beach was something no movie can ever show you. It was a junkyard of war. Wrecked landing craft like ours, burned out tanks, and the boys. So many boys lying in the surf. The water was red. People say that, but you don't understand it until you see it. The sea itself was bleeding. We eventually got off the wreck and were put to work, doing what we could. But our ship, our home, she never left that beach. She became a part of the landscape of what happened there. Just another tombstone on Omaha. Lost. That's the only word for it. Utterly and completely lost. You spend years in this system where every minute of your day is decided for you. You wake up when they say, you eat when they say, you fight when they say, and you sleep when they say. Your whole world is this tight-knit group of men who have seen what you've seen. They're your family. Then one day the war is over. They hand you a piece of paper. I think I got $86. And they put you on a train. Just like that. They spent months breaking you down, turning you from a civilian kid into a military man, a killer if you had to be. But they spent zero time turning you back. I remember my first liberty after I got back to the States. I couldn't wait to see my mom, my family. The first day was wonderful, all hugs and tears. But the next day, my mom went to work, my kid brother was at school, my father was at his job. My neighborhood was empty. All my friends, all the boys my age were still in the service, or they weren't coming back. I walked the streets I grew up on and felt like a ghost. I didn't fit. I couldn't wait to get back to my ship. Isn't that something? I was so desperate for freedom, and when I got it, I ran right back to the cage because it was the only thing that made sense. No, never. People say time heals all wounds. That's not true. Time just papers over them. It builds up a scar, but the wound is always there, right underneath. 75 years. Sometimes it feels like 100 lifetimes ago, like I'm talking about some other young man. But other times, when it's quiet at night, or I see something on the news, it's yesterday. It's this morning. I can feel the cold spray of the English Channel on my face. I can smell the diesel and the cordite, and I can see his face, the boy on the ramp. I don't even know his name. I've tried for decades to find out who he was, but there were so many. He was just a kid, maybe 18, 19, the same age I was. He had this look in his eyes. It wasn't fear, not anymore. It was just surprise. And then nothing. I held a stranger in my arms as he died, and his face is more clear to me now than the faces of people I've known for 50 years. That doesn't fade. That part of you is forever 19 years old, kneeling on a steel ramp in the middle of hell. It became my life. Not the fighting, but the before and after. Everything is measured by it. Before the war, I was a kid from Brooklyn with simple dreams. After the war, I was a man who had seen the end of the world. You can't go back. You try to build a normal life. You get a job, you get married, you have kids. And I did. I have a wonderful family. But there's always a part of you that's separate, a part that's still over there. For years I couldn't talk about it. Nobody could. We just buried it. We came home, and America wanted to move on, build highways and suburbs. They didn't want to hear about the nightmares. They didn't want to hear about the shaking hands or the 1,000-yard stare. We were the greatest generation, they said. We were heroes. But we didn't feel like heroes. We felt like the lucky ones who didn't get killed. And you carry a guilt with that. Why me? Why did I get to live a full life when that boy on the ramp didn't? It changes your whole perspective. You learn not to sweat the small stuff because you know what the big stuff really is. I want them to know the cost. Not in dollars, not in territory, the human cost. When they see the black and white photos and the old newsreels, I don't want them to see soldiers. I want them to see their sons, their brothers, their friends. We weren't heroes. We were kids. We were mechanics and farm boys and students from Brooklyn. We were terrified. We were crying for our mothers. And we did what we had to do. Freedom isn't a word in a textbook. It's not a politician's speech. It was paid for on beaches like Omaha, in the skies over Germany, in the jungles of the Pacific. It was purchased with the lives of boys who never got to grow up, who never got to fall in love, who never got to hold their own children. I'm not a hero. The heroes are buried in the American cemetery in Normandy, thousands of them, white crosses and stars of David, row after row. Go there. Go and see it. and understand that every single one of them was a life, a future, a world that was sacrificed. Don't ever forget that. Don't ever let their memory be for nothing. That's all we ask. Just remember.